We will be walking up this street here for a mile and a half to the Battle Monument and hopefully see a few things along the way. Bennington has its own theater. This little town has a lot going on, but the winters must be brutal. I've been seeing some more beautiful architecture along the way. But what really caught my attention and kind of fascinated me is this glass porch. I looked up this house on the internet and it was built in 1900. And that was the tail end of what was considered the golden age of porches, which was the mid to late 1800s. That's according to the National Park Service, which has a webpage devoted to the history of porches in the US and the restoration of historical porches. Porches weren't enclosed in glass like this in New England because of the cold weather. And porches were a popular area for socializing starting around 1850. They were an outdoor parlor, basically. And I just think this porch is the bee's knees. We're approaching the Bennington Museum, and the museum was apparently the target of a crime over the weekend. Underneath that black cover is a statue of Abraham Lincoln. The statue was spray painted in red with the number 38, and a sign was put up saying "Land Back." And this is in reference to the 38 Dakota Native Americans that Lincoln ordered executed after they became violent. But the reason for the violence was that they weren't given enough land to sustain themselves. They couldn't grow or hunt enough food, and they were on the brink of starvation. So they were forced to fight for it. I had never heard about this, and I hope the museum doesn't sweep this under the rug. They should create some kind of an exhibition at the museum about the Dakota 38. That's my opinion anyway. This piece is called the Apple Orchard Band, and it's made of wood and metal. The band has a nice view. This is the old First Congregational Church. This was the first church in Vermont that abided by the principles of the separation of church and state. It cost $7,800 to build that church in 1805. The poet Robert Frost is buried here, and that's the grave everyone comes to see, and I shall do the same. The oldest headstone in the cemetery belongs to a woman who died in 1762. A lot of Revolutionary War veterans are buried here, and there's also a traitor buried here in a mass grave. His name is David Redding. He decided to fight on the side of the British, and he was executed for it, hung from the gallows. But he wasn't buried until 1981. His bones sat in a drawer all that time. I guess that's what happens when you're a traitor. These angel carvings are considered American folk art. And there's a Latin phrase above some of these angels, memento mori, which means remember you will die. I do try to remember that. I don't dwell on it though. There's a man who died on the Titanic buried here. He was a farmer who went to England to buy sheep. But there weren't any sheep on the Titanic, just cats, dogs, and chickens. And there was a woman who actually died on the Titanic when she wouldn't leave her dog behind. So there must have been a separate ship for sheep. the sheep ship. Following the signs to the poet Robert Frost's grave, I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Hence, 2 roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Robert Lee Frost. I had a lover's quarrel with the world. And under his wife's name it says, together wing to wing and oar to oar. Frost says the best way out is always through. And I agree to that, or in so far as that I can see no way out but through. That reminds me of Winston Churchill's advice. If you're going through hell, just keep going. We're on the street that has the battle monument at the end of it. Beautiful historic houses. But I wouldn't want to live on the same road as a popular tourist destination. I wonder if that lowers the value of the house. Oh, wild turkeys. A woman who lives in this neighborhood said it's rare to see them here. It's usually people's chickens running around. There it is. Kind of reminds me of the Washington Monument. I first saw it when I was traveling down Route 7 a few miles away from Bennington. It really stands out, and I also had a great view of it from the Walmart, which was nice. It commemorates the Revolutionary War Battle of Bennington, when the Vermont Green Mountain Boys fought back the British from taking all their supplies. It was an important win, and it happened right here. And that statue was the commander of the Green Mountain Boys militia. Now we'll be heading a few miles south to the campground. I usually do take the road less traveled, as Robert Frost would call it, but I saw that the campground was a quick drive down Route 7, and I intended to take it, but I forgot to change my GPS to highways. So now we're taking the back roads. I got nervous when I saw that it looked like dirt roads. I haven't attempted that in the van yet, even though it's front-wheel drive. But these roads are actually paved with like a coating of dirt on top, so this isn't too bad. I doubt the campground will have cell service way out here, especially with these mountains. Luckily, I have hundreds of hours of movies and TV shows that I recorded onto hard drives from all the DVDs that I ended up getting rid of, and I downloaded some audiobooks, so I'll be all set if I have no internet. This is Pine Hollow Campground. I was 15 minutes early to check in, which is a campground no-no. I could hear the poor woman that runs the place in the bathroom, and her dog kept barking his head off at me while I waited at the check-in desk. Lesson learned, I won't check in early ever again. This will be the smallest campground I've ever stayed at so far. They have internet here, which is nice, even though it's a little spotty. I'm surprised it's not full because this is prime time to see foliage in Vermont. This is the view from my van back window, also known as the bedroom window. Not too shabby. I'm not sure if I like the water fountain in the middle of the pond. It's kind of cheesy. I'd rather have a natural setting. The fire rings surround the water. That must look nice at night. This is the first campground I've stayed at where I've seen other camper van conversions. 3 of them even. I've seen some factory-made camper vans like Winnebagos in places, but this is the first I've seen ones like mine that were custom-made. My van builder isn't even doing custom vans anymore because he can't find skilled labor. He's just building vans and then selling them as is, which has gotten more common with van builders. There's only one little trail next to this campground. It's nice, but not enough for us. So we're going to walk about 1.5 miles down the road to a trail I found on the All Trails app. So we walked quite a ways to this trail, only to find it underwater. But I can't be upset because the walk to get here was so pleasant and beautiful. No cars on the road. We'll try to walk on this trail a little bit anyways. So we walked for a little ways, and then I realized that I dropped my GoPro somewhere on this trail. So we walked back and forth in this mess until I found it. I'm just glad I found it, and we can head back. Somebody dipped my dog's toes in white paint. Why would they do that? Those feet will be walking around the Catskills in New York, because that's where we are headed next.